What matters to a potential customer? Think about that for a second and just answer it humanly. Having something that says trust about the company, maybe seeing some example jobs, maybe hearing from some customer testimonials, maybe learning about what they're about, right? So make your post about that. That's it. That really is it. What does the person want to know? Don't try to trick Google. What does the consumer on that profile want to know? If you can answer that, you have SEO under the bag. It's not really that technical anymore.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What's up, everybody? Michael Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to the Painter Growth Podcast, where Micha and I are just going to sit back and drink some coffee, chat about love, life, and business.
It's Micah, but I get that
mispronunciation.
It's all good.
There we go.
All good.
So anyway, dude, let's just kick it off. You want to introduce yourself? How'd you get in the painting space? Give me the
cool. Well, my quick summary background is I was a kid, 10 years old, parents divorced. They were both working as salespeople for Ford at the time, and they divorced. They both went their own separate ways. And I don't know how it happened. I was way too young to understand the nuance of it. But my dad decided to create a flooring company, and my mom decided to create a painting company. And they were living aside. And then my mom remarried someone who also did contracting. So both sides of the family were in contracting. And I grew up. My mom started a painting business. And I remember my first summer, 10 years old, out there like scraping paint off of what probably should have been a lead safe paint operation. That clearly wasn't. Way too early for that. That rule was not out yet. So I'm out there working in summers and actually painting houses. And from 10 until a little around 20 or so, I painted with her weekends, summers, full time during the summers, almost all weekends, because they just paid way more. She would pay me way more than like I could make anywhere else. I never did like the whole McDonald's thing. I was slinging a brush. I was running crews. And at the height of it, I was actually like basically like the superintendent of the company running. Later on, she got in out of like the classic remodels into like new construction. And at one point I was running like a half a dozen 4-man crews doing a bunch of new construction for D.R. Horton and things like that, ordering paint, coordinating all that stuff. And then I did that. And then I decided like I didn't want to be a contractor for the rest of my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no freaking clue. I just knew I didn't want to do that. I enjoyed it and I respected it. I just knew it wasn't for me. So I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So what can I do? I just joined the military. So I was like, let's just do this for a while and figure myself out. So I joined the Air Force on this right before 9/11. And I ended up getting assigned to a special operations base. Wasn't special forces, not one of those like badasses or anything, but I was on a special operations command, right? And so 9/11 happened, deployed right away. I spent most of a 6-year deployment in the Middle East. And then that got to its tail end, and I was like, do I leave? What do I do? I liked being in the military, but I also knew that there was no end in sight for that deployment. And I was like, I did 5 tours in 6 years. I'm done. I've done my time. I'm moving on. So I decided to exit. And the first thing I did is I started a business. Very first business, I started a recording studio, kind of random. Didn't last very long. Sold it, left on, and then started my first agency. So this is like late 2000s. So about 18, 19 years ago, just shy of 20 years, started my first agency, and been doing it ever since. I sold my shares of my first agency. So Search Click Grow is like, I think about 5 years old right now. I had a different agency. And I got some non-competes and stuff like that. So I built a very big agency. It wasn't niche. We did a lot of different things. So we did work in home services, but we also did medical, we did finance, we did legal, we did a bunch of things. We actually, in that agency, I did like History Channel TV shows and worked with Allstate and worked with General Electric. I worked with some giant companies. It was a very, very large agency, much larger than my current agency. But we were doing really big stuff. But what I didn't like about it was it was very, very difficult to scale and had a lot of heartaches because we didn't focus on one niche, one problem. We focused on like 20 niches with 50,000 problems. And it was extremely hard. And it took way too much of my time. I was working 120-hour days. I had to be there for every problem. It was very hard to train someone to solve problems because every problem is new. You've never seen it before. So like SOPs were just not a thing. You had to hire like just A-class talent in every single role. Incredibly hard, very frustrating. My wife and I just decided this just wasn't for us. We talked for a while. We wanted to niche down, sold our shares, left, started Search Good Grow with the intent of focusing on home service and only home service. And so
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Wow.
So
First of all, thank you for your service.
that's kind
That's
of how we
awesome.
got here, and we've been specifically home service, mostly painters because of my background, not entirely painters, but
Mhm.
mostly painters. Probably 80-90% of my books are painters. Got
Yeah.
a few other random niches. We have some landscape designers and a couple other things, but mostly painters. But we are contractor specific. We are digital marketing specific. So it's way easier. We only do like 4 or 5 things, and we only serve like a couple different client types. It's very easy to scale. We have incredible, repeatable SOPs.
Sounds like the exact opposite of like your first agency.
Yeah, it was nuts, man. It was so many different things. I mean, literally like the client types. I'd be dealing with like a countertop installer. The next day I'm dealing with like a C-suite guy from General Electric. And that's just so many different hats and voices, and it was not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mind working with the big companies or the small companies. I like just, I enjoyed all the work, but it was just too many shifting gears, too many shifting hats. It was very, very stressful. The absolute most stressful 10 years of my entire life. It was more stressful than being deployed in the Air Force in the Middle East in a war. So put that in perspective. You know what I mean? That was less stressful than that agency was for those 10 years. And that's why we left. It was just, this is not scalable. It's not repeatable. It's not healthy. Um, you know, way too much stress than I care to relive. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. So how are
but
you
now,
finding it now, just working with kind of just, primarily painting contractors on a very limited
correct.
feature set?
Yeah, and I mean, we do a few things, but primarily it's web, Google, print, branding, a little bit of Facebook ads, things like that. Primarily digital. We assist in some print stuff because we have design teams, so we'll help people with postcard marketing and things like that if they're already our clients. But we don't actually do any print or anything at all like that if they're not already our client. So
Mhm.
we only take on clients that want web and Google and ads and digital stuff, but we'll help them with the non-digital stuff if they're our client. We
Let's talk
absolutely.
about let's talk about SEO for a little bit because there's a lot
Mhm.
of agencies out there, as you know, that say that they do SEO and they get some sucker on a 12-month contract and charge them whatever hundreds or thousands per month and don't end up doing anything because SEO is so like it's almost like synonymous with snake oil now in the marketing space because it's people just have no idea what they're looking for. So how do you think about that?
So first of all, I think you're right. I think one of the interesting parts, so like when I first got into marketing, nearly 20 years ago, my first entry, I actually did an internship at an infomercial agency. So traditional TV marketing, learning how to script and how to do sales stuff. So my first cutting of my boots, so to speak, like learning how to sell in marketing, which was kind of interesting. And I use that still to this day. But what was interesting is that being in a position like that, you couldn't be there and not know your shit. You just absolutely could not fake it. But over the last 20 years, there's a lot of agency things, and SEO is one of the biggest ones, where it is snake oil salesman. And part of it, I think, needs to be the responsibility of the business owner. And I do my best job as an agency to educate because I want people to make educated decisions. Not all agencies do that. They want them to make uninformed decisions because they're selling them crap. But the idea should be that I believe that every owner should understand a little bit about what they're hiring. Yes, it's going to take some time, but like I had a client the other day, we're trying to go live with a website, and he didn't understand the difference between a domain and a website. He's like, I gave you access. No, you didn't. You gave me access to your website. I need your domain. And it took me 5 hours to explain this to him. And that's not something a business owner should not understand. They need
Mhm.
to know that difference. There is a difference between a Facebook account and a Facebook ad account. There's a difference between a domain and a this. There's a difference between Google ads and SEO. There's a difference between maps and your website. And you need to know these things. And so the first step I try to do is educate on that, right?
I think you made a post on that, like a pretty long post the other day. I
I have
came
over
across
the
the feed.
last few years, if you looked at my history, I've made a bunch of them. I this is an unfortunate truth. So I told you I've been in this for right at 20 years. And a couple years ago, I realized my wife and I were sitting down talking. She's my co-owner, by the way, and lead designer. So all the websites you see, it's mostly her. Um, so we were sitting down and talking about this, and we were just reliving some of the bad agency things that we've had. I don't mean bad clients. I mean bad situations that fall on our lap. And we realized that throughout our history of doing this together, we haven't had a single week in our almost 20-year history where a client hasn't come to us or a potential client hasn't come to us where an agency took advantage of them, held assets hostage, said you got to pay this extraordinary bill before we're going to give you your website, or did some snake oil salesman where they did something and they couldn't get it. I have an example. I got a lot of examples, but one that comes to mind specifically what you were talking about. A few months ago, I had a client up in the Northeast, like New Hampshire area, paint contractor, really good guy. Him and his brother are both phenomenal painters in the same area. And he had got sold from this website company. And I'm not going to mention names, but this is a website only company. He was paying like $697 a month, I think, somewhere in that ballpark a month for like 4 years for SEO services. And he was like, it's not getting anywhere. It's not doing anything. I don't know what to do. And so I just pulled up like a tool called SEM Rush, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's a cool tool for those that listen that don't know. It's an agency tool that a lot of agencies use, but you can also use it for free for like a 2 or 3 reports a day without paying anything. And then if you want to turn pro mode on, you can pay $100, $200 a month or whatever. But I pulled up a report for his website and I noticed that like there's hundreds of broken links. There's no backlinks or no link building of any kind. There's pages that have no titles and metas. Basically, this wouldn't even meet the standards of what we would launch our day one website with. And this is years later. This is like not even close to acceptable. And they've been charging them $600 a month for years. And we're like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, but these guys are not doing anything, like absolutely nothing. I can see it in these reports. And I broke down what every data point meant and why it was bad and what was there. And then so he goes to cancel, and it's a WordPress site, which you can transfer. They wouldn't give it to him. They didn't give him access. So then, and it sucks because now I got to rebuild a website and I got to charge them build fees. It's a whole lot different than transfer. I can transfer a website for $100, but to rebuild one is potentially thousands, right? And so this company overcharges for years, doing absolutely no measurable anything, but they're charging him for SEO. And then when he realizes it and says, "Hey, you guys aren't doing anything, I'm going to leave and go to another agency," they won't even let him leave. The website he paid like $4,000 for, they wouldn't even give him a copy of it.
Mm-hmm. I know you probably won't, but I'm a proponent of name and shame when you find things like that.
Yeah, I don't like to get into that, but yeah, but frankly, there's a lot of
it helps people be accountable.
Yeah, and I think that like for the first thing I try to do to help alleviate that is one, we have some products and services to help people that are in that situation. Again, I see at least one a week. And that's really, really sad where there that many people, like think about that. One a week is 52 weeks times almost 20 years. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients here. It's not cool, but it happens. And so I think the first thing that a company needs to do is they really need to vet their agency. And going along with that, you have to spend a little bit of time to know what these buzzwords mean. SEO has a definition and you need to know it. Website has a definition and you need to know it, right? You wouldn't hire like a crew lead and not know what their responsibilities are. Why would you hire an SEO and not know what their responsibilities are? You need to know enough at least to hold the agency accountable. You don't need to know enough to do it, but you need to understand what they're doing and have reportability, accountability, and some transparency.
I mean, I think some of it, like absolutely, the business owner should have full accountability for where their money goes. I think though, a lot of business owners get caught up in some of the terminology that a lot of marketing agencies use, like autopilot and guaranteed, and like all of these things that just kind of imply that if they just pay you money, you will double their business with no.
And that's a really hard thing. And I have some pretty strong opinions on this. I truly believe that any agency that says, if you pay me X, I'll give you Y, and it's a definitive thing, they're blowing smoke up your butt. Like it's not possible. There's one and only one thing that I know to be completely true in marketing. If I spend money on ads, someone will see that ad. That is a guaranteed.
Yeah, you buy impressions.
You're buying impressions. That's all you're doing. When you're doing SEO, you're trying to rank a website organically to get impressions. You're trying to rank up higher so more people see you. When I sponsor an ad on Facebook, Instagram, or Angie's or whatever, I'm trying to make it to where more people see you. Now, most of the time, almost all the time, that will lead to clicks and it will lead to phone calls and form fills. But that part is the non-guaranteed part. So when someone says, "Oh, if you spend $2,000 a month, that's going to be X amount of leads," that's what's going to happen. dude, no, that's just not a thing. It's just not a thing. You might have a history of track record with the last 20 clients. Everyone that spent 2,000 got this much, but it's almost like the stock market. I can show you the past gains and historical truths, and I can say that probably we're going to be close to this, but I cannot say this will happen. And agencies do it every day. It's not possible to do because why? We don't control Google. We don't control Facebook. If I did, then maybe I can guarantee it, but I don't. I don't control how many competitors enter your market in the next 6 months. I don't control what happens after the phone rings. I had a client one time, turned on Google ads for him. And like, I know the first week was probably like, I don't know, 5-10 leads, right? And it was a phone call only ad at this point, which I don't do anymore, but I was doing at this point. And so this guy gets a bunch of phone call leads, and I can see it. It's trackable, call tracking system. It's not arguable. We have it here. And he's like, dude, these leads suck. I can't close anybody. I'm like, okay, cool. So we go back and listen to the phone recordings. His first phone call, like ring, ring. He's like, what do you want? He's clearly on the job in there, and he answers the phone call. What do you want? And then wonders why he's not getting anything from it. Right. So like, there's so many things that an agency can't control. And to say that like you're going to spend X and you're going to get Y, there's 1,000 variables in front of and behind it that an agency can't give you. What we can say and should say is that we have a track record of this is our history. These are my cases. This is what I've done in web before. This is what I've done in ads before. This is an example of what you will probably and very likely see. And we are going to work our tails off to make sure you have similar results. I can never guarantee exact results, but we're going to try our very, very best. And this is likely what's going to happen. And then past that, I think agencies should do a better job of making sure that what happens after the lead. There's a ton of agencies that are just like, I put up a website, do some SEO, and I don't care what happens after. But the problem is that most of the people that need marketing also aren't great at sales yet. So what happens when they answer the phone, like I just said? Of course, they're not going to get any freaking jobs from it, right? What if they don't have a CRM and nurture sequences and someone fills out a form and never hears back and they get dropped? There's no reminders, there's no automation. So tools like drip jobs and things like that come into play. Right. So there's a bunch of things that we can put into it. An agency, I view my responsibility is not just to get leads for them, it's to help them get customers.
Imagine this is why you probably the main driver as to why you launched your coaching arm.
Correct. Yeah. It's this sole reason for it. So the reason that we did our coaching arm, and we don't do a lot of the coaching stuff that you do. We're not really trying to train on operations and other things and numbers and stuff like that. Our coaching arm is between turning on marketing and getting a customer sold. That's where our thing is. Like, we talk a tiny bit about like things that you could do during a job, but we're not doing operations. We're not doing pricing. We're not doing the scaling things that you do and a couple of the other coaches. Our program is about client acquisition. That's it. Marketing, lead nurturing, and closing. That's it, because it's not just one. And it took me a little bit, like in my previous agency, we had services that were just marketing. We just, as a company, not personally, but as a company, we just didn't have the right systems in place to really care and make sure that person had benefit and net gains at the end of it. So we had clients that would spend money and just get leads, but not get customers. And it's not fruitful. That doesn't do anything. And so there's an education component there. And that's exactly why we have that.
So let's get a little nerdy for a minute. What types of things are working these days in terms of search engine optimization?
Great question.
Like, full transparency, SEO is probably the thing that I know the least about in all of internet marketing.
Okay, that's fine. So I think that if we back up 20 years ago when I first started, Google was almost entirely organic. That's all it was. And
you have 2 pages of ads before you get to the first organic.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is very, very critical for every business owner to understand is there's 4 specific spots on Google for local searches. It changes for other things. How do I change an alternator or something? It's a little different. But if I'm saying
shopping stuff, you get the shopping ads.
Shopping stuff, yeah. So SERP, search engine ranking position, it's called SERPs for short, is the definition of what happens on the Google page. When I make a search in Google and I see that page is called my SERPs page, right? That's what us nerdy marketers call it. And so the things that show up, the areas that show up on that page have been changing a lot. More recently, there's an AI description summary for some searches, right? And so Google has changed what's been in that SERPs, constantly testing and changing things. The most common results for local searches are the following 4 things. Very first thing would be Google local service ads, called Google Guarantee. The next is Google search ads. Now, this is incredibly confusing. Most people don't get this, is that Google actually has 2 completely different ad platforms. It's entirely different login, different page, different management, completely different setup, completely different results, completely different pricing.
LSAs versus traditional Google ads.
Yeah. It's called Google ads is traditional Google ads, and local service ads is the newer one, right? So those 2 spots are the first 2 spots. LSA is first, then Google ads. And the next is the first organic spot, which is most people call the map pack. And that's your Google Maps listing, which is your Google business profile. And then underneath that, your final organic spot is your website. So basically, if you were to divide the page in half, the first half is 2 different ad spots. The second half is 2 different kinds of organic results. And so even when we talk about SEO, we're subdividing it. There's 2 aspects to SEO. The first is what we call directories or profiles or citations or maps, a bunch of different words. They all mean the same thing. So like Apple Maps profile, Bing Maps profile, Google Maps profile, Yelp, Yellow Pages, Better Business Bureau, anything that has your name, address, and phone number is a profile that could potentially rank and help influence that map pack. Google is the primary driver. It's normally what shows up on Google. It's always what shows up on Google. But the other profiles actually unknowingly, and most people don't know this, but they actually affect that. So Google's algorithm works on a trust basis, which I can dive into a little bit more detailed, but it's influenced by signals that it views as trustworthy. That's essentially how you trick Google, is you just be trustworthy, right? And so one of the things for the map pack to make it rank more is like, yes, I need to claim the profile. I need to fill out the profile. Most common mistake is people just skip fields. They don't fill it all out. Like every single field, fill it out, because the more complete, the more trustworthy, right? Now, after I do that, then what I can do is go sign up for Yellow Pages and make the same information on Yellow Pages. Go sign up for Apple Maps, put the same information on Apple. Repeat that over and over and over again. And a lot of marketers call this citation building. What that means is like, I'm creating another map profile with the purposes of boosting Google Maps. And if you do that, if you make 20, 30, 40, 50 different profiles, it's labor intensive as all get out. But if you do this with this exact same information, and it's critical that it's exactly the same information. Like my area code here is 904. If I put 904 hyphen blank, blank, blank in one profile, and then I do parentheses 904 in another, it's not the same. Even though the digits are the same, I literally mean character for character. You have to say exactly the same thing on every one of them. And if you do that across a bunch of profiles, now all of a sudden you're telling Google, hey, not only do I have this complete Google profile, but all of these other profiles are also saying the same thing. That must mean it's trustworthy, because it's a bunch of votes of confidence saying exactly the same information. It's like, I don't know, like looking up a medical study and seeing it in one place versus seeing like 20 different universities having the same results. One's more believable than the other, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how Google views it. So when you have a bunch of profiles that say exactly the same thing, same photos, same logo, same web, same open hours, same everything, then all of a sudden your Google Maps profile goes through the freaking roof, mm-hmm. right? That's the secret trick really to ranking it. It's labor intensive. Like I said, very labor intensive, but that's really the most of what we do to rank it.
So just to marinate for a second on the Google Maps thing, mm-hmm. Because that's a big thing that a lot of people are talking about. It's obviously really important.
It's huge.
So what you're saying is basically the number one way to rank really well in the Google Maps pack is to have the exact same profile across directories.
The first step is to make sure your profile is claimed and absolutely complete.
Okay.
I get profiles from agencies, big name agencies that you and I know, and they're not complete. I get it every single week. We average about 1 or 2 new clients a week. And so we are going through our onboarding process. A lot of times we'll get profiles that are either from them or from another agency. Big agencies that we know in this painting space give me profiles that are not complete. And it's scary, right? And I mean like there's a section in Google Business Profile where you put the services, interior painting, exterior painting, things like that, right? Basic stuff. Those things don't have descriptions on them. From 99% of the profiles we get, they are void of any descriptions. Why? There's like 300 words that I can put in there to talk about what my interior painting service. Why are we not filling that out? It's a blank field. Fill it out. So that is absolutely the number one. Fill every possible field out in your profile. And we jokingly talk about internally, like SEO is mostly accurate information that's completely filled out. There's some buzzwords and there's a couple technical things here like schema and titles and blah, 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 blah. But literally, if you look at your webpage and fill it out, if you look at your profile and fill it out, you're 90% there. I swear to God, that's all it really is.
How about
There's
like when you hear about like Google reviews and making
Yeah,
posts?
that's where the other 10-20% comes in, right? But the
Okay.
first giant chunk is just filling out your profile, right?
Okay.
Now the second step to a really successful Google Map profile is creating the updates. They call it updates. It's essentially social posting. I don't know why they call it updates. It's like Google Update. You click it. It's like, here's a picture, here's some text field, here's a link. It's just like a social post on Facebook. So do that often, a couple times a week, at least a couple times a month, and that keeps your profile active. And then you're going to get reviews. You need to be really consistent with getting reviews, and then reply to every review. And we actually did a live video and on my profile and Facebook group last week. There's been some really, really drastic changes to Google review policies, really big. And I won't go through all of that because I did a whole hour on just that, but there's a couple big policies that are going to affect a ton of people. The policies came into effect because of a bunch of scammers buying fake reviews. So Google had to like tighten down the rules. And unfortunately, those rules are going to affect genuine reviews. But some of them, like one of them is if the profile doesn't mention the experience that you had with the company, it's probably going to get turned off. Think about how many reviews you have, like maybe 5-star review and says, this company was great to work with. That doesn't say a single thing about the experience. And according to Google's new rule, that's not a valid review and it could get removed. It might be a valid person. It probably is. You probably worked hard for it. But now all of a sudden, not only can those old reviews get removed for valid reasons and you can't fix it, but now it also means we got to change the language of how we ask for reviews too. We can't just say, will you leave me a 5-star review? We now need to say, hey, I'd like you to leave me a 5-star review, but just so you know, if you just click 5 stars and put 2 or 3 words, the review is probably going to disappear. So if you wouldn't mind saying like a few sentences, talk about your experience with me, the salesperson, the paint crew, whatever, just something about the experience you had with our company. And we have to change that narrative right now, or these reviews that we have are going to go away. And, so there's big reviews. And that's another reason why to hire an agency is to actually stay on top of those reviews, right? We first realized that, a little while back, we had some clients wake up and 20 reviews are off their profile. And now we got to figure out why, right? So that's the summary of that. There's a bunch of new reviews for that. But so our process for maps ranking is fill out the freaking profile. Absolutely, completely. And then we want to instill a updates and review campaign where we're getting reviews consistently and doing those updates consistently. Again, updates are just like social posts. And then the third phase is going out and creating other directory profiles. That's our 3-step process.
Is there any like trick to the posts that you make on, like, should you use the keywords, or like, is there anything kind of tricky around that you should be thinking of?
Yeah. And I think that, talking about like SEO and buzzwords and what people don't understand and do understand, let me talk about keywords for a split second, and then I'll go back and answer that question. So like if we back up like 10 years ago, exact match keywords like painter in Atlanta, that was a thing. And I could optimize a page for that exact word and that exact phrase. And then I might have another page, Atlanta paint contractor. And Google actually viewed those two as two different things. Google got really smart really fast, and that's no longer a thing. So when you think about keywords, you shouldn't think about individual exact match words. You need to think about topics. So if I'm thinking about interior painting, I can say it 50 different ways and say exactly the same thing. And Google now completely understands what I mean. I don't have to think about keywords in a very literal word for word, character for character sense anymore. So I can just have conversations and talk about it.
So do you think this was led primarily by like large language models, like ChatGPT type things?
Part of it, but Google was doing it before that. Okay. So Google like made
this more data than anyone in the world.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. So Google was doing these large language models like 5, 6, 7 years ago and implementing it and rolling it out. And they call it contextual keywords. What they really mean is that the reason they did it is because of marketers like me, right? We'd have marketers that would spin up 1,000 pages with every possible variant of keyword, but none of these pages are really unique. They're just the same page over and over again with a slightly different flipped word. Instead of ABC, it's now BCA. And we would create hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pages, but they're not really useful for humans. And Google's policy is they want things that are useful for humans. And every rule that they make is with that in mind. Every crackdown on Google profile, every crackdown on an SEO thing, it's all about what matters to humans. So I would say, like, when we talk about keywords, yes, it matters, but you need to write for humans. So going back to your Google Business Profile, what matters to humans? What matters to a potential customer? Think about that for a second. Just answer it humanly. having something that says trust about the company, maybe seeing some example jobs, maybe hearing from some customer testimonials, maybe learning about what they're about, right? So make your post about that. That's it. That really is it. What does the person want to know? Don't try to trick Google. What does the consumer on that profile want to know? If you can answer that, you have SEO under the bag. You don't really, it's not really that technical anymore. Again, there's a couple technical things, but most of it is about people. And so if you write for people, what people actually want, and you make your mission to deeply understand what people want, SEO and web stuff starts getting really, really easy because you're thinking about the consumer, not the search engine. And so if you're chasing the search engine, you're probably going to do this all day long. But if you just constantly focus on your consumer, Google's policies are always updating for consumer anyways. So it's a more direct approach. That's what we do. We only think about the consumer. So we want to get to know our customers and their clients, right? That's really what we want to know and what makes them tick. And that's who we write for. So the quick answer to that is vary it up, but pay attention to what your consumer wants. If you've had a customer that said, you know, what does your process look like when you paint an exterior stucco house? Okay, make a post about that. That's what you do. You listen to what people say and you answer their concerns. And you do that publicly in social post, in Google post, and blog post on your website. And that's SEO. That really is
obligatory question. Do you think if you had an idea like that, say, hey, here's a before and after picture, I want to make a post on our process, and then you use ChatGPT to write that description,
100%.
It's fine?
Right now it is. There's some debate on whether or not these large language model ChatGPTs and BART and these other things, whether they're going to end up getting SEO penalties or not. And I don't have an answer to that. I don't think anyone does. There's a lot of assertions, but there's no answer, right? We're not going to know what Google's going to do. But keep in mind, I think it's not going to happen. And here's why. Every policy that I've seen Google change in the last 20 years has been one that has tried to punish people that are scamming Google and reward actual human, real business behavior. So think about the Google Maps thing I talked about. People are buying fake reviews by the thousands. So their policy they just did is trying to ban those. Now, of course, you may have a couple that accidentally get caught in that crossfire, but mostly this is designed for them. It's designed to make you actually work for a review and get a real human review so that we can see real businesses and real interaction, because that's useful to humans. And so if we just apply that, every rule that I've ever seen Google make has been in the net benefit of a real company. Now, there may be a couple extra hoops to jump through, but it largely is going to be beneficial.
I think realistically too, if you put in the right prompt and get a description of how to paint an exterior house from ChatGPT, and you look at it, it's like, hey, this actually makes sense. We do it like this. And then you post that, then that is net useful.
That's my point, is I think because it's net useful, right? And what would be more useful? Let's say I'm really, really bad at writing. I'm a paint contractor. I know my business. I can run my crews. I've got a $5 million company, but I just suck at writing. Which is more useful? Me actually gutting through and writing this post that sucks, it's grammatically incorrect, misspellings, all this stuff. And I don't really think about like order of operation and how people process information or anything like that. I just kind of brain dump on a piece of paper and it sucks. Or I give that brain dump to ChatGPT and they clean it up and I post it, which is more beneficial to the human that's reading it, the cleaned up version. So I think that that's going to win, right? We use ChatGPT to assist all the time. That doesn't mean that we write our entire websites with that. That's not what we do, but we use it for assistive actions on a consistent basis, right?
Yeah, as do I. I mean, I think, just like, I can't remember who was it that said, ChatGPT isn't going to take your job, or AI is not going to take your job. The person who uses AI is.
Yep. 100%.
So it can help you be way more effective.
Yep.
So now how about moving on from the Google Map Pack to just true Google SEO? I know there's some like crazy rabbit holes and a lot of technological stuff, but like in general, kind of what's working right now.
There is, but I think if we apply the same logic that we were just talking about, what truly makes a website great is thinking about the person that's viewing it. There's this really great book, and I forget the author. I read this web book a long time ago called "Don't Make Me Think," and it's a web experience book. It's about UX, UI, which UX stands for user experience, UI, user interface. They work together. The user interface is what you see, how you interact with this user experience. And so we have UX, UI on like remote controls. There is a sect of psychology called industrial organizational psychology. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it's not the clinical side. Industrial organizational psychology studies how people interact with things. And so there's a very famous industrial organizational psychology that rewrote the rules of how cockpits were designed in airplanes with the F-14. Put controls in different spots, completely different spots, and it rewrote the history books of how we think about fighter planes. And no fighter plane was ever designed the old way again, because it was fundamentally, intuitively, and they actually studied this. They put people in simulators with the old F-1s for like post World War II era, right? The F-1 is an older airplane, and they studied people in these things, and they put people in stressful situations, like your plane just got hit by a thing. What do I reach for? What do I do? And they found the innate things that people were reaching for and doing and interacting with, and none of the buttons that they had were where people were actually innately going for. So all they did was move the shit to where actually people were going already. And so there's a whole sect of psychology that does that. Think about if you got in a car and the key wasn't right here, or the shifter wasn't right in the center, right? What would you do? What if your buttons to move the seat weren't on the side or underneath? They were like up top on the dash. What would you do? I can tell you right now, I have no idea what type of TV you have, but I can guarantee if I went in your house and grabbed your remote control for your TV, the power button is at the top left, and it's in red and has a circle line button on it. Every TV in the world has that. So we get these things, these expectations of where things are supposed to be. Some of it's innate, some of it's socially programmed. And so now when we design a website, remember SEO is about humans, not Google. All we have to do, now you need to understand what humans want, but once you do, it's just about putting the things in the right order that they want to know them, putting the buttons in the right spot. And if you can do that, even remotely well, then all of a sudden your website beats out 99% of the competition, because you're thinking about the user, not the search engine. So I think the true mark of great SEO and great web design, great marketing as a whole, is trying not to think about the platform, trying to think about the human on the other end.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, that was quite the rabbit hole for
Mm-hmm.
that point. But I mean, fundamentally, it makes sense, right? The better of a human experience you can create, ultimately, longer people are going to stay on the website. The more people are going to click through different pages, the more likely they're going to reach out.
And
in the right
Google actually measures that, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, SEO 10 years ago, they measured like things like semantics and keywords and blah, 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 blah. And it's still, that stuff still matters a little bit, right? But now they measure user experience, and they use that ranking as the primary metric of whether it ranks. So let's just say hypothetically, you and I have paint businesses in the same city, and we have equally designed, let's say we both spent like some $5,000 agency fee to build these really nice websites, and they both look great. Fundamentally, you and I don't even understand what's different with them, but they both look great. Different, but great. And then Google decides to rank my site number 1 and yours like maybe number 5, just randomly because of some initial keyword recommendation. And then all of a sudden people get to mine and there's broken links, pages take a little bit longer to load, no one can find how to contact me, and they can't figure out what they want, and they leave. They click the back button more than they engage. All of a sudden, my site's going to start getting demoted. And let's just say yours has amazing UX UI. Everything that they want is right at their fingertips. They don't have to think about it. It's exactly where they want it, when they want it. And it increases engagement, user rate, click-throughs, all that kind of fun stuff. You're going to end up in number 1 spot, and I'm going to end up off of page 1, even if the initial assertion from Google is to put me above you. So user experience is probably the number 1 thing that from a website side you need to think about. How easy is your website to use? Is it fast? Does it look good on all devices? Is the content information in the right spot? You know how many times I get to people's websites when I'm auditing them, and like the first section in the website doesn't even say what they do? Like, I did this audit of one person's website a couple months ago, and he had created this kind of trying to be really clever, putting this slogan up at the top. But I looked at this website, and up at the top, his business name didn't say anything about painting. It was one of those kind of like non-painting business names, right? It didn't say like painter growth or like peach painting. The painting wasn't in the business name at all. And then the words up at the top of the page didn't say anything about house painting, residential painting, interior painting, exterior painting. Had this clever slogan, and he's wondering why he's not ranking or getting anything.
Like life in color or something like that. One of those types.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the slogan was, right? Sure. But it was just trying to be clever. And I'm like, dude, you're trying to outsmart Google, but all you need to do is be clear with humans. What do you do? Where do you do it? who do you do it for? If you can't answer that in 5 seconds of being on your page, you're doing it wrong. That's really it. So there's this really cool website that we use called usability.com. Pretty neat. You can do these peer-reviewed user tests, and you can pay like $1 per test result. One of the cool things that we'll do is we'll design a website, and the above the fold is a part of the website before you scroll, right? I know you know that. So that first part of the website, we'll make this design and we'll send it over to them, and they get this software-induced test called a 5-second test. And as the user, they get paid like 50 cents to do the test. We pay $1, the company makes 50 cents, the tester gets 50 cents. And so it's like a little side gig. You can just go in there and do these things and make a little side bucks. So we'll get like 100 people to take this test. And what will happen is we put a screenshot of the above the fold, and the software delivers it to these people, shows it to them for 5 seconds exactly, not 1 nanosecond longer or shorter. And then it asks a couple questions. What does this company do? Who do they do it for? Things like that. And if they can't answer that clearly, we have messed up bad. And most of the time, that's where people get things wrong in web design. And if web design is about people and user behavior influences SEO, then really what we're talking about is the super, super ninja trick key to ranking high on Google with your website is focus on the user and making very clear, easy to understand, easy to navigate websites.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, we put tons of information down below the above the fold, like FAQs and processes and why we're better and reviews and all the other stuff. But really 90% of it's in that top part, making it really clear, really easy navigation, really easy to understand how to get in touch, all of those things. That's really the key.
Yeah.
And there's a few like technical things that we talk like schema and all that other kind of geeky stuff. Most of these website builders these days have that stuff as like fields that you just fill out. So it almost becomes like, just like the Google business profile, like there's a field, fill it out. There's a link for put your Facebook profile link. It's going to put it in like some invisible code in the head that you don't even need to worry about what it does. Just know that fill it out. If it asks you for your business name, fill it out. If it asks you for your phone number, fill it out. So if we just fill out all the basic details and then we really, really focus on what do we do? Who do we do it for? Why do we do it? Where do we do it? And make that content super clear in answering those questions, there's not much left to SEO.
Do you guys build websites
Mm-hmm.
right now? I wasn't sure if you still did.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
That's actually mostly what we're known for. My last agency and this agency, we've won multiple like national awards for web design. It's because of the experience. It's not because we actually design it the best. There's probably one of the things that I think is interesting about design is there's some amazing illustrators and artists that are far better than us. They make these amazingly elegant, pretty websites, but there's a fine balance between pretty and usable. And Google wants usable over pretty. Mm-hmm. So in some cases, you can actually see ugly websites that have the right content in the right order beat out a really pretty website that doesn't have the content in the right order.
So what's your process to build a website for somebody to fit their brand and voice and image and all of that?
That's an awesome question. I love it. The first thing is we just have a discovery meeting. We just try to understand what they do, who they are, what makes them tick, why they got started. Are they a family company? Are they prior vets? Are they, a big team? Are they a small team? They do big jobs, elegant jobs, quick jobs. You know what I mean? Like one day painting versus something else is a whole lot different, right? So we try to figure out all the things and then try to identify that client type. Once we have that, it just goes to our team of writers and we write a bunch of different stuff, right? Headlines and copy. We think about the position of their customer, which we've already dug in and tried to understand. Once we understand that customer, we'll sometimes use Google. Cool trick, if you go to Google and type in a question, there's a people also ask section. And then if you click on the arrow on that people ask section, it drops down a question and all of a sudden more questions get asked. So it's a real cool thing to figure out like Q&As for certain subjects. So we'll like how often should I paint my home? Go to Google and type that in. I'll ask, there'll be like 4 or 5 people also ask right there. You expand in those couple of things and all of a sudden you got 30 different Q&As. So we'll take those things and then we just start answering that and interweave that stuff into content. But of course, we're only doing the questions that actually matter based on the relevance. You know what I mean? And then from the design standpoint, this is really hard. Really, really hard. But every one of our websites is made from scratch with unique design. We do not use templates. There is no cookie cutter. There was no starting point in any design that we ever make, ever. And that's tough because a lot of agencies for speed what they do is they just have a template, and it's like, here's where your heading goes, here's where this goes. And we don't do that because we know what humans want. We understand their ideal customer. Then we go, okay, well, for this type of customer, this is what we should be putting on there. For this type of customer, it's a little bit different. Maybe it's even the same thing, but in a different operation. So like, let's just say 2 example cases. Let's say one paint company, their idea is to be like the quick flip, cheap, affordable guys, kind of like the one-day painter kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
What is the first couple things I need to say for that company? I need to say that we're fast and we're affordable. And I need to make the booking process incredibly frictionless. Now let's flip that. What if I have a client that literally does European fine finishes, and his interior processes on the walls, they use this stuff, not just cabinets, on the walls, they use everything. His average interior paint job takes 60 days and is $50,000 or more, right? So what happens with that guy? His customers, what are the first couple of things I need to say? It is definitely not fast and cheap, right?
Yeah,
it's a different thing. And so like, there's not really a cookie cutter way of saying what we do. The point is we go to their end customer. If if our clients understand their end customer and we help them do that, then automatically we know what to say because we know what the problems are, right? And in those 2 examples, that's a pretty wide extreme examples. And there's a lot of like middle points in between that. But I think that the nit and gritty of it is just to understand what type of business it is, what their clients are, what type of business they want to operate, and then say the things that do that, right? I think marketing a lot is really just saying what you do. You know, there's going to be a person that wants the quick, cheap painter. There's going to be a person that wants that intermediate semi-quality painter. And there's going to be the guy that wants the fine finishes on the wall. All 3 of those clients exist. You just got to figure out what you want to do and then articulate that that is what you do. And then the right clients will find you, you know? So that's in a nutshell, the process. It's hard, hard to get into the nitty gritty technical stuff.
Yeah.
That's essentially the overarching view of what we do.
Yeah. And so if anyone is interested in, chatting with you guys about SEO or about a website or about any of this stuff that we've talked about today, what's the best way for people to kind of get a hold of you?
My Facebook page, Micha McLain, or searchquickgrow.com. That's our agency page, and there's a contact page there. You can set a Zoom meeting with me and chat. So
yeah,
either one of those works.
Cool. I can throw a link. Below this as well, just so people can
awesome.
get a hold of you quickly. I always do like to ask. I know this isn't like a product pitch type of webinar, and I think you provide a ton of useful information. I mean, I took some notes today that I'm excited to kind of dig into a couple of those websites and whatnot. But I do like to reward our listeners who listen to the end of the podcast.
Okay.
So this is on the spot.
Okay.
Didn't prep you on this. If anyone listens to the end and reaches out to you and mentions this podcast, what kind of deal can you give them?
That's a great one. Well, let's say we're talking about websites because that's what we spent the whole time talking about.
Sure.
So our normal pricing for our websites, standalone, not doing a marketing agency thing, just standalone, starts at $5,000. Anyone that wants to work with me, I'll do it for $3,000.
Wow.
So 40% off. That sound good?
Huge. Can you do my website?
Absolutely.
So just for anyone listening, that is an incredible price for a website.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, all custom SEO'd out the wazoo and customer centric is the big thing.
I will put that for sure in the description. Let's keep that open for like 60 days after this post.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, rewarding. Big bonuses for people who listen to the end. So
I like that. I didn't even know you did that. That's pretty cool. And definitely was on the spot. I wasn't prepping for that guy.
No, I like to do it. Just to see how people kind of respond. And also like when people listen to the end, they should get something.
Yeah, for sure.
So Micha, I've seen your name written down a ton of times. Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
All good, man.
But stoked to finally meet you, man. Really great hanging out with you.
You too.
You clearly know your shit. And again, thanks for your service. I'm sure that was an easy 6 years. And let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Love to, man. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks, brother.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.